as we close out 2025, there are escalations happening all over the place, and we're going to get into some of those today. So with that, let's begin with our brief Palestine update. Today is the 816th day of Israel's genocide in occupied Palestine. And in Gaza, the health ministry issued its latest update yesterday, December 29th. Put it up on the screen so that you can see it. And you'll see there that they reported that in the prior 48 hours, one more Palestinian in Gaza had been murdered and 3 more had been wounded. And the cumulative toll from the beginning of the genocide over 816 days is 71,266 dead, 171,222 injured. That is more than 10% of the pre-war, pre-genocide population of the Gaza Strip has either been killed or wounded. And these numbers, as we all know, are extremely conservative and unquestionably a large undercount of the actual death toll, because these numbers only encompass people who came to seek treatment or who were delivered, their bodies were delivered to the morgues and hospitals of Gaza. So since the ceasefire on October 11th, 414 people Israel has killed and have wounded 1,145. 680 bodies have been retrieved from the rubble in that period. And the ministry says that the death of a citizen due to a building collapse, raising the number of victims who arrived at hospitals. There was a low pressure system going through the area with a lot of rain, harsh winds, which in and of itself has posed a deadly challenge to especially the young people of Gaza. You'll see at the bottom of this update, it says the death of the child Arakan Firas Musleh, 2 months old due to severe cold, raises the number of deaths due to cold and the low pressure system to 3 cases. So the pace at which Israel is killing Palestinians since this so-called ceasefire went into effect has remained more or less constant. It averages out to about 5 killed per day and nearly 15 wounded per day. There is no rational way to characterize this as a ceasefire. So that is where things currently stand in terms of the death toll and the number of people being wounded in Gaza. Now, Trump and Netanyahu, as I mentioned at the outset, just met in Florida yet again. As a backdrop to that, they were asked, and we're going to show you in a moment, Trump was asked about Israel's ceasefire violations. But before we do that, I want to show you exactly what the tally is for the ceasefire violations, and then we'll show you his answer. The government media office in Gaza released a critical report marking 80 days since the ceasefire took effect on October 10th. Israel has committed 969 systematic violations, resulting in 418 killed and 1,141 injured. The violations include 298 direct fire incidents against civilians, 54 military incursions into residential areas, and 455 attacks on homes and unarmed citizens. The Zionist entity continues to weaponize the humanitarian aid. Only 19,764 trucks out of the agreed 48,000 have entered Gaza, 42% of the commitment. Only 425 fuel trucks out of 4,000, a little more than 10% of the commitment. Continued closure of crossings and the ban on shelter materials, tents, and caravans has left 1.5 million displaced people exposed to the winter elements. So you'll see there that, of course, Israel is, as has been its practice historically, is violating the ceasefire agreement 6 ways from Sunday. So, of course, Netanyahu traveled to Mar-a-Lago for yet another meeting with the Donald. As you can see here from a post by Ali Abunimah, our friend at Electronic Intifada, the war criminal flew over Greece, Italy, and France on the way to meet his fellow war criminal in Florida. And because all 3 of these countries, Greece, Italy, and France, are signatories to the Rome Statute, the founding statute of the ICC, they had an obligation to intercept that plane and arrest Netanyahu, force it to land, and turn him over to The Hague for prosecution. Of course, they didn't do that. And I have no doubt that they told Netanyahu in advance that he was free to fly through their airspace. Otherwise, I doubt very much that he would have done it. So they are yet again flaunting their complicity, these Western leaders, in Israel's crimes. So let's go then to the press conference. We're going to show you a clip from this press conference that covers, I think, 3 or 4 different subjects, and we'll pause to comment on each of the subjects. So let's have a look at what the 2 war criminals had to say.
If you and the Prime Minister talked about having Israel pull back its troops before Hamas fully disarms, I know that's been an issue. Did you push for that today?
Well, we talked about Hamas and we talked about disarmament, and they're going to be given a very short period of time to disarm, and we'll see how that works out. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be in charge of that from our side, but if they don't disarm as they agreed to do, they agreed to it, and then they'll be held to pay for that.
That's a lie. That is a bald-faced lie. The ceasefire agreement that Hamas signed says nothing about disarmament, simply nothing. And not only that, but the whole time they were negotiating that agreement, and consistently over and over again since it went into effect, the leadership of all the resistance groups, not just Hamas, said, we're not disarming, period. And we will disarm only when we have a state, a Palestinian state, and at that point we will turn over our weapons to the government of Palestine. But until then, we're not disarming. So this is just a flagrant lie, and Trump is setting up the public for a resumption of the full-blown genocide instead of this sort of genocide light that we've been witnessing since this agreement was signed. So don't believe any of this, folks. There was never any commitment made by the resistance to disarm, and in fact, they emphatically denied that that was their intention. So let's see what else he had to say.
And we don't want that. We're not looking for that. But they have to disarm within a fairly short period of time.
With Israel withdrawing its forces?
Well, that's a separate subject. We'll talk about that.
Mr. President,
Yes.
Mr. President, do you have a message for the Prime Minister about the West Bank? And are you at all concerned that settler violence, Israeli settler violence, could be undermining the peace plan?
Well, we have had a discussion, big discussion, for a long time on the West Bank, and I wouldn't say we agree on the West Bank 100%, but we will come to a conclusion on the West Bank.
I know everybody knows, anybody who's paying attention, that every single day Israeli settlers and military forces are killing and maiming Palestinian civilians, driving them off their land, stealing their resources, crushing their economy, what remains of it, in the occupied West Bank, expanding settler outposts, quote unquote, legalizing them, even though Israel has no authority to legalize them under international law. They're illegal. That's the end of it. All of these various crimes and repeated statements by the leaders of the Zionist entity that they have no intention of allowing the Palestinians to have a state. And yet Trump can't utter a peep of criticism. You just listen to what he had to say. He refused to utter a peep of criticism about what Israeli settlers and the Israeli military are doing to Palestinians in the West Bank.
I could ask, what is the disagreement?
Well, I don't want to do that. It'll be announced at an appropriate time. But he will do the right thing. I know that. I know him very well. He will do the right thing.
Oh, yeah. Netanyahu, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt he's going to do the right thing, because that's exactly what he's been doing his entire career, isn't it?
Yes.
There is a growing fear of a confrontation between Israel and Turkey. How are you going to ease this tension, given the fact that President Erdogan calls Mr. Netanyahu Hitler and compares Israel to the Nazis?
Well,
now, that's my favorite question of the whole press conference. At least one reporter in that entire gaggle of reporters had the temerity to ask a really tough question. So if you didn't hear it, I'll repeat. The reporter says, how are you going to deal with Erdogan, since he described Netanyahu as Hitler? and said, compared Israel to the Nazis. And here's what Trump said.
I know President Erdogan very well, and as you all know, he's a very good friend of mine.
And by the way, just watch Netanyahu's face as Trump delivers this answer.
And I believe that, and I do respect him, and Bibi respects him, and they're not going to have a problem. They're not going to have a problem. I know him very well. And you've seen me do things with President Erdogan and Turkey that nobody else could have done. We're not going to have a problem. He's done a fantastic job. I'm with him all the way. I'm with Bibi all the way. Nothing's going to happen. Yes.
Mr. President, are you concerned that Israel is not moving quickly enough to phase 2 of the peace plan?
Well, I'm not concerned about anything that Israel's doing. I'm concerned about what other people are doing or maybe aren't doing. But I'm not concerned. They've lived up to the plan. They're strong. They're solid. And sometimes they don't understand when somebody violates something that you want to give them a second chance. Well, we'll give them a couple of second chances. But no, Israel's lived up to the plan 100%.
Now, we just read to you the figures, what Israel has done during this this so-called ceasefire. Even if Israel had done only a quarter of what has been documented, how could anybody with the slightest commitment to truth say that Israel has lived up to the ceasefire agreement 100%? 100%.
Dimitri, I think this is a little Freudian slip here, because he hasn't said Israel is agreeing to the ceasefire. He says Israel is committing to the plan. So
Right.
there's clearly a plan that he's referring to. Also, something I found super silly is that he says, I know Erdogan, I know what he's up to. Yet we hear a lot of people defending Erdogan, saying that he has some mastermind plan to liberate Palestine or whatsoever. And Trump is blatantly saying in our faces that Erdogan is nothing more than hot air working on behalf, in cahoots with Israel, with the United States, and he's part of, of whatever plan Trump has.
Yeah, that was quite telling. Let's listen to the last part of this spectacle.
Don't forget, we made the plan possible by taking out Iran. And speaking of Iran, I hope they're not trying to build up again, because if they are, we're going to have no choice but very quickly to eradicate that buildup. So I hope Iran is not trying to build up, as I've been reading that they're building up weapons and other things. And if they are, they're not using the sites that we obliterated, but they're using possibly different sites. We know exactly where they're going, what they're doing, and I hope they're not doing it, because we don't want to waste the fuel on a B-2. It's a 37-hour trip both ways. I don't want to waste a lot of fuel.
Yeah, what concerns him is not all the people who are going to die if the war with Iran resumes. What concerns him is the fuel that will be wasted for American bombers to travel this long distance from the United States to the Islamic Republic. By the way, since we're on the subject of Iran, retired Brigadier General, I think he's a Brigadier General, Itzhak Brik, just authored an op-ed which was published by Haaretz, in which he said that if there is a resumption of the war with Iran, and if Iran decides to focus its firepower on the part of Israel that contains 70 or 80% of its population, a very little space, it's kind of like a triangle between Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Haifa, that it's entirely possible that Israel will be destroyed and that it will never recover. That's coming from a retired Brigadier General, Itzhak Brik. One other thing I want to say about this press conference, I watched the whole thing. That's just a few minutes of it. It's like 26 minutes long. And there was not a single question about the Epstein files. No one said to, Netanyahu standing right there beside Trump, it's a perfect opportunity to ask him, could you please explain why former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak was meeting dozens of times with Jeffrey Epstein, which has been revealed by these files? Could you please explain why Ehud Barak's right-hand man spent extended periods of time, several occasions, at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion in Manhattan? None of that was asked. And frankly, I think that it's absolutely inevitable that was at least one of the subjects that Trump and Netanyahu discussed during this most recent meeting. because of the implications of this for the national security of the United States, and especially for Israel's national security, if people understand or come to the conclusion that Israel was basically in cahoots with Jeffrey Epstein and was running a sex trafficking ring with 1,200 minor, teenage girls in order to acquire compromat on powerful politicians, I mean, that's probably going to be the end of, Americans' willingness to support the genocidal entity. Certainly a lot of people will turn on Israel, and they already are turning on Israel. So, it boggles the mind that nobody would ask these most obvious and pressing questions about Netanyahu's or Israel's relationship with Epstein when they're sitting right there. But anyways, that's the nature of the corporate media nowadays. Rami, any thoughts about that press conference?
I think what stands out the most is that the United States, Trump, are entirely absolving Israel of any form of violations that happened since the ceasefire agreement came out. And saying that he entirely trusts Netanyahu means that he's acknowledging that Netanyahu didn't do anything wrong over the last 3 years or even before that. He still sees Netanyahu as a peaceful partner. He sees him as, actually, he's putting the blame on the Palestinians for not committing to the ceasefire agreement, although I really haven't heard of any ceasefire violations that the people in the Palestinians in Gaza have committed. But alternatively, I had another thought. It would have been interesting because Hamas has called on an open investigation on every activity that happened on October 7th by an independent body, whether it is the ICC, ICJ, the Red Cross. I think this would have been an amazing opportunity as well to ask that question. Is Israel willing to heed the call of Hamas for an independent investigation into the reality of what happened on October 7th? Hamas is saying clearly that they followed international law throughout this entire operation. And they're basically putting the blame on Israel for the death of civilians through this Hannibal directive. This would have been an amazing question to ask as well, beyond the Epstein question that you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So in related news, Israel today was hit by massive disruptions to its communication system. This is might be happening right now. I don't know if they've resolved it yet, but this morning, the press reported that there were network outages across Israel. As you can see, an article in the Zionist media outlet JFeed here, they are raising the question about whether it was a cyber attack. And so just so you know how bad this is, JFeed reported that a broad communications disruption struck Israel on Tuesday afternoon, knocking out internet and cellular services across multiple providers. So this was not, one company having a problem. This was multiple providers and briefly affecting critical digital infrastructure nationwide. Technical sources said the outage simultaneously impacted Hot Mobile, Cellcom, and Partner, along with additional services that do not rely on a single network provider. The scope of the disruption led infrastructure officials to conclude it was not a localized malfunction, but a large-scale event affecting core systems. According to preliminary assessments, the failure appears to have originated at the DNS level with suspected problems involving a Cisco forwarder used to route traffic. And sounds like a pretty nasty telecommunications problem they're suffering today in the genocidal entity. And on a similar note, the Iranian hacker group Handala has struck the genocidal regime yet again. And you might have missed this news because typically the media is doing everything possible, the corporate media, to ignore it. But up here on the screen, we've put a post from the X account of Handala. And by the way, they only have about 6,000 followers. They're almost certainly being suppressed by X. So I encourage you to subscribe if you're active on X to Handala's account. They come out with some amazing revelations. This one posted a few days ago says it's addressed to Netanyahu's inner circle, and they call it the BB Gate operation. To every official still clutching the illusion of secrecy, you feel it now, the tightening chest, the cold sweat, the gnawing dread. That's not just fear, it's the knowledge that every layer of your security, every secret entrusted to Tsahi Braverman, I think that's Braverman, Netanyahu's chief of staff, gatekeeper, and vault of all forbidden truths is now wide open. Braverman's iPhone 16 Pro Max is hacked. Not just now, Handala has been watching, infiltrating, and listening for years. The silent guardian you trusted, the one orchestrating Bibi's world, deciding who gets in and who disappears, collecting every dirty secret, has become your greatest vulnerability. The vault you depended on is now ours, and on and on. And they published videos which apparently were on the iPhone of Braverman, and they're vowing to disclose a lot of dirty secrets in the days ahead. It's interesting, Rami, isn't it, that this country, which purports to be, technologically superior to everybody, is, repeatedly shown vulnerabilities, one of which is having a drastic effect on telecommunications in the country today. So perhaps they're not quite as adept technologically as we're led to believe.
I mean, Iran is serving Israel its own medicine, right? You look into the terrorist attacks that Israel committed in Lebanon through this Patriot attack that has targeted civilians, massive amounts of collateral damage, and just regular people, part of public service in Lebanon, that were targeted. And that was applauded by Israel and this the whole Western cybersecurity apparatus, right, that are all in cahoots with Israel. Iran is showing that Israel is not, it's this paper tiger. I think that's what Sayyid Hassan used to call Israel, in a sense where they need to surveil the entire world and hack into supply chains to create this sense of fear and insecurity across the entire world, because it knows how fragile they are. And Iran is the only country in the Middle East, along with the Palestine and the Palestinians, that know truly what Israel is made of, and know that whatever they do to us, Iran is serving them that same warning. The last live stream, or 2 live streams ago, I showed a clip of Iran showing the hacking. They put like a message in the car of the chief of nuclear of Israel. Mm-hmm. And that has shown that, well, Iran is showing a lot of restraint. And that restraint might end at some point if Israel doesn't keep crossing every single red line. Mm-hmm. So they're just serving their own medicine. Israel can be targeted anywhere, anyhow, as you've mentioned from this Israeli former brigadier general who clearly demonstrated that Iran could eradicate the population of Israel.
Yeah. Could you unpack that a little bit about this nuclear scientist, the car? What happened there exactly?
I showed a clip 2 weeks ago, right? So basically, the Handala, the same group, published a message, a video, basically threatening the chief of nuclear of Israel, saying, when you open your car door this morning, did it click in a different way? We were able to, tamper around your vehicle. Mm-hmm. They've left a bouquet of roses in the trunk with a message, and they said, well, basically insinuating that we got into your personal space and be careful, right? I mean, if I woke up one day with a bouquet of flowers in my car, no matter who it is, I'd be quite suspicious. How did you get to do that? And that shows that Iran has people on the ground able to, the same way Israel has people in Iran, Iran has people in Israel. And that sense of paranoia that some people might have in Iran, I'm hoping that people in Israel and occupied Palestine also have that sense of paranoia as well. And this war is going to keep escalating. And I think this goes back to our live stream where we spoke about the biggest myths of 2025, that Iran and Israel are there's peace between Iran and Israel, or there's no longer any war. Well, clearly there's massive amounts of Iran is showing that they can target Israel.
Yeah. And by the way, on Christmas Day, Israel claimed that it had killed an operative of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in a strike carried out in Lebanon in breach of the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. So, I think the writing is on the wall here. There is going to be, I think they're trying to provoke Iran into attacking to make it easier to sell to the public another war. But Iran so far is not taking the bait. And if they don't, I think it's inevitable. in the months ahead, that we're going to see a resumption of that war, even though a resumption of that war by Israel may well prove to be suicidal. So that's what 2026 has in store for us, I fear. Now, Rami, before we move on to the subject of Nigeria, I invited you to say a few words this morning. We talked about our live stream about Abu Obeida. Could you let us know what news we have on that front?
Yeah. So, well, yesterday, the Izzeddin Qassam published a 25-minute video, basically mentioning a list of high-ranking martyrs that were assassinated over the last couple of months. There were reports since August that Abu Obeida might have been assassinated, and there were no messages or no acknowledgments from Hamas or Izzeddin al-Qassam until yesterday's video. And
he was the spokesperson of Qassam throughout the genocide, right?
He was the spokesperson of Izzeddin al-Qassam, but to a certain extent, he was a spokesperson of the Palestinian people. And I say this because his messages were just so inspiring and motivating. Always calm and always under. I mean, there's one of his speeches where he talks about if you thought assassinating our leaders would put an end. That was after the death, the martyrdom of Yahya Sinwar. He said, if you think assassinating our leaders would lead to peace, then October 7th would never have happened. And every time you kill our leaders, new leaders are replaced. He also mentioned that soldiers are replaced by 10 other soldiers, and one martyr is replaced by 10,000 other martyrs, and one leader is replaced by more Palestinians that are becoming leaders. I just think that he says that the land of Palestine grows freedom fighters the same way it grows olive trees. So very connecting to our people. This is not a struggle of a Palestinian armed movement against an entity, right? This is the quest for national liberation of a people over our entire land. Always talking about the plight of our people in Gaza, in 1948, in the West Bank, in the refugee camps, as well as in the diaspora, like we are in Canada, or all over the world. What was also interesting is that the leader, Abu Obeida, the spokesperson, was replaced by another comrade named Abu Obeida as well, and that just shows that actually Abu Obeida isn't really someone that you can kill, right? This is a voice of our people. You actually need to, if you want to get rid of Abu Obeida, if you want to get rid of the voice of the Palestinians, you need to assassinate every single one of us. Sorry. And this is why I think it's interesting that he kept the name Abu Obeida, because it's a continuity of the same message. Nothing has changed. The only moment our path as Palestinians will change is once Zionism is eradicated from our land and no longer a threat to our people. And I think, I mean, there was a lot of also of analogies throughout his speech that Abu Obeida did, which hints towards the former Abu Obeida, the way he raised his finger, the way he was masked with the red kufiya. I think basically continues that whole symbolism that Abu Obeida is one person, and it's a continuity of a single thought. But I think it's important that we also mentioned, that Izzeddin al-Qassam released the official name of Abu Obeida, which is Hudayfa Samir Abdullah al-Kahlut, also known as, I think, Abu Ibrahim. That was his kunya. And he was martyred along with his children. Israel targeted his house, his apartment, where all his family was basically standing together. So I think it's important to acknowledge Abu Obeida as a spokesperson for the Palestinian people, but also Abu Obeida as an individual who is one among many other martyrs who has a name, and we need to remember that name and the names of all thousands of our martyrs since 1948 and before that are facing the most genocidal entity supported by the entire Western world.
Yeah, you know, you have to marvel at the courage of anybody who would assume this responsibility of being the spokesperson for the resistance in Gaza, because it goes without saying that this person now has a target on his back and will be living with a death sentence hanging over his head every single day that he operates in that role.